3 weeks ago, I received a certified letter from an attorney in Savannah, Georgia, informing me that my paternal grandmother had passed away and left me the sole beneficiary of her entire estate. $2.3 million. A Victorian house in a neighborhood that developers were paying obscene amounts of money to get into. A portfolio of modest investments she had been quietly building for 40 years, while my mother told everyone she was a sad, stubborn old woman who had nothing worth visiting. I had not seen my grandmother since I was 11 years old. My mother had decided, after a particularly ugly argument about money, that the woman was toxic and manipulative and that her children deserved better than someone so cold and withholding. I believed her. I was 11. I believed everything she told me. Now I was 29, sitting in the parking lot of a grocery store at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening, holding a certified letter that told me the woman I had been taught to forget had quietly, persistently, and deliberately left me everything she owned. I did not cash the check. I did not contact the attorney to begin the transfer process. I did not call a single person in my family. Instead, I sat in my car and thought about something my grandmother had written in the letter she left attached to the will. She had written, "I hope you find out who loves you before you find out how much this is worth." The two pieces of information should not arrive at the same time. She was right. I needed to know one thing before I claimed a single dollar of that inheritance. I needed to know who would show up for me when I had nothing. I waited 2 days. Then, on a Thursday evening after I got home from teaching 3rd grade, I changed into old clothes, drove my car to the edge of town near the highway, and called my mother. I let my voice shake when she answered. I told her my car had died completely on the side of Route 9, that I was stranded in the dark, that the tow truck company needed $600 up front before they would come out, and that I had $40 in my checking account until my paycheck deposited on Friday. I told her I was scared. I told her the cars were flying past me and I did not feel safe standing on the shoulder. She sighed the way she always sighed when I called with a problem. The long, slow exhale that communicated, without a single word, that I had interrupted something important. "I'm at my book club, Clara," she said. "We're in the middle of a discussion." "Mom, I'm on the side of the highway." "Then call a friend. That's what friends are for." A pause. "And honestly, you really should have a credit card for situations like this. I've told you 100 times that living paycheck to paycheck is a choice. Figure it out." She hung up. I sat there for a moment. $40. Paycheck Friday. Side of the highway. And she had hung up to go discuss a book. I called my older sister next. She did not answer. 30 seconds later, a text appeared. With a client. "Can't talk." "What's up?" I typed out the same story. Car broken down. Stranded. $600. Scared. She read it. I watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. Ugh, that's the worst. I'd Venmo you, but honestly, I'm stretched super thin right now. Call AAA? Or a coworker? Sorry, can't help tonight. I set the phone on the passenger seat and stared out at the dark road. My older sister had just posted on Instagram 3 hours ago. A photo of her holding a glass of wine at a rooftop bar with a caption about closing a deal and treating herself. She was stretched thin at a rooftop bar. I pulled up the name of my coworker. We had been at the same elementary school for 2 years. We ate lunch together every day, complained about the same parents, split orders of takeout when we stayed late grading papers. She drove a car with a cracked rear bumper that she had been meaning to fix for 8 months. She lived alone and sent money home to her mother in Michigan every month. She was not a person who had extra. She was a person who was carefully, deliberately making it work. I felt guilty, even dialing. I was about to ask her to drive 45 minutes in the dark for a problem that was not real. She answered on the second ring. I told her the same story. Car, highway, $600, paycheck Friday. "Which part of Route 9? She asked immediately. "Near the exit for the fairgrounds." "Okay, I'm leaving right now. 40 minutes. Stay in your car with the hazards on, lock your doors, and text me every 10 minutes so I know you're fine." I opened my mouth to tell her not to come, that it was too far, that I would figure something else out. "I already have my keys," she said. "Don't argue with me." She arrived in 38 minutes. She had stopped at an ATM on the way and taken out $300 in cash and brought it in an envelope. She had also brought me a granola bar and a bottle of water because she said being stranded made people hungry even when they thought they weren't. She sat with me on the shoulder of the highway in the dark, hazard lights blinking orange across her face, and did not mention once how far she had driven or what she had been in the middle of when I called. I held the envelope of $300 and could not speak for a moment. "My car isn't actually broken down," I finally said. She turned to look at me. I told her everything. The letter, the inheritance, my grandmother's note, the test. I watched her expression move through confusion, then understanding, then a quiet, serious stillness. "Your mom said figure it out," she repeated, word for word. She was quiet for a moment, looking out at the passing headlights on the highway. "Did you already know what the answer was going to be?" she asked. "I think I did," I said. "I just needed to see it clearly." She nodded. She handed me the granola bar anyway. The drive home was when I started making phone calls. Not to my family. To an estate attorney in the city, who specialized in asset protection and trust structures. I had found his name in a professional directory 3 days earlier and had his number saved. I called him that night and left a message explaining that I was the beneficiary of a recently settled estate worth approximately $2.3 million, that I had not yet initiated the transfer process, and that I needed to speak with him urgently about several family-related concerns before doing so. He called me back the next morning at 7:45. We met that afternoon, and I explained everything. The inheritance, the house, the family dynamic. My mother's constant narrative that my grandmother had been a cold, difficult woman who never cared about any of us. My sister's casual dismissal of me on the side of the highway. Before I claim a single asset, I told him, I need to understand exactly what I'm walking into. I need to know if any of them have been positioning themselves around my grandmother's estate. And I need to know if there's anything about my sister's finances that would explain why she has been particularly aggressive about how worthless and difficult my grandmother was. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "You want a forensic financial investigation?" "I want to know the truth," I said. "Whatever it costs." He smiled slightly. "Let's start with the house." What his team found in the next 10 days dismantled everything I thought I knew about my family. My sister had been telling everyone for years that she was a highly successful real estate agent. She posted constantly about luxury listings and closed deals and the hustle of working in a competitive market. She wore designer clothes and drove a leased car she treated like a personality trait. She talked about money the way people talk about money when they are deeply afraid they are about to run out of it. She was deeply afraid because she was deeply about to run out of it. The forensic accountants my attorney hired found that my sister had not closed a legitimate transaction in 14 months. Her real estate license had a compliance hold on it due to unpaid fees. She had maxed out 9 credit cards to maintain the appearance of success, and was 3 months behind on her apartment lease. The car she photographed herself in for Instagram had a repossession order that had been filed 46 days ago. But none of that was the most important finding. 3 months before my grandmother passed away, my sister had contacted the firm handling my grandmother's estate directly, presenting herself as the family's primary real estate representative. She had told them she was authorized to accept a preliminary offer on my grandmother's Victorian house from a boutique development company that was aggressively buying up property in that neighborhood. The offer was $1.4 million. My attorney pulled the neighborhood comps and sat back with a particular expression on his face. "That house," he said, tapping the printed appraisal, "is currently valued at $2.1 million. The development company was getting a significant discount. She was going to pocket the difference," I said. "She was going to use it to vanish her debt and buy herself 2 more years of pretending." He paused. "Except the estate attorney handling your grandmother's will refused to proceed without written consent from the sole named beneficiary, which is you, which your sister told them you would not give, because you were, in her words, unstable and difficult and incapable of managing a large financial decision." I sat very still. "She was trying to have you legally declared incapable of managing the estate," he said. "She had not filed anything formal yet, but she had made preliminary inquiries." My sister, who had not answered my call from the side of the highway because she was at a rooftop bar, had been quietly engineering a process to strip me of my inheritance, while I ate lunch with my coworker and graded spelling tests. What about my mother? I asked. He opened a second folder. My mother did not know about my sister's scheme. My mother had her own scheme. My grandmother's estate included a small parcel of commercial property 2 towns over that my grandmother had owned outright. It was currently occupied by a dry cleaner on a month-to-month lease. My mother had been in quiet contact with a commercial buyer for 8 months, having convinced them that she was the authorized agent for the estate. She had accepted a soft verbal agreement for $320,000. The property, my attorney informed me, had been appraised at $490,000 following recent rezoning. She was taking a cut, I said. She was taking all of it, he said. She planned to inform you that the property had been sold as part of the estate settlement, that the proceeds had covered outstanding estate fees, and that you would receive a net payout substantially lower than the actual value. I thought about every conversation I had ever had with my mother about my grandmother. The cold, difficult woman. The one who never cared. The one who had nothing worth visiting. She had been keeping me away from a woman who wanted to leave me everything, so she could position herself to intercept it. I went home that night and sat at my kitchen table for a very long time. Then I called my coworker and asked if she wanted to have dinner that Friday. She said yes immediately and asked if I was okay. I told her I would explain everything over food. She said she would bring dessert. I told her everything over a bowl of pasta and a slice of chocolate cake she had picked up from the bakery near her apartment. I watched her face as she processed the information in stages. Your mom has been keeping you away from your grandmother for 18 years, she said slowly, so that she could eventually claim the estate. That appears to be accurate. And your sister was going to sell your house for $1.4 million when it's worth $2.1 million, tell you the estate fees ate the difference, and use your money to pay off her debt. Also accurate. She stabbed a piece of cake. What are you going to do? I have a meeting with my attorney on Monday, I said. And I have a family dinner in 3 weeks. My mother hosts one every year in December. Everyone comes. She considers it non-negotiable. I paused. I'm going to go. She looked at me for a long moment. Do you need backup? She asked. The family dinner was at my mother's house. She had hosted it every December for 20 years, which meant she had been hosting it for 20 years in a house that was, as I now knew, carrying a second mortgage she did not know existed because my brother had forged her signature on the paperwork to cover a string of bad investments he did not want to admit to. My attorney had found that part last. My brother, who was 10 years older than me, and had always been the quietest of my mother's 3 children, had gone to 3 different lending institutions over 4 years and used my mother's property as collateral. The loans totaled $280,000. He had paid back almost none of it. The bank had filed a notice of intent to foreclose 6 weeks ago. He had been intercepting my mother's certified mail. My mother did not know she was hosting her annual dinner in a house that was 2 months from being seized. I arrived early, which surprised everyone, because I was usually late in the way that people are late when they are not particularly excited to be somewhere. My mother opened the door and looked at my coat, which was new, and my boots, which were also new, and said nothing about either of them, which was its own kind of comment. My sister arrived 20 minutes later in the leased car with the repossession order. She was wearing a blouse I recognized from a shopping post she had made 6 weeks ago with a caption about treating yourself. She hugged me briefly and asked how the school year was going, which was the question she asked when she wanted to communicate that my life was small and predictable. My brother arrived last with a bottle of wine he said was excellent. He shook hands with everyone and made a joke about traffic. He looked tired in the specific way that people look tired when they are keeping a large secret. We sat down to dinner. My mother had cooked everything herself, which she always did, and always made certain we acknowledged. My sister complimented the centerpiece. My brother poured wine. I ate my salad and said very little, which no one found unusual because no one expected very much from me. Halfway through the main course, my sister set down her fork and reached into the bag she had hung on the back of her chair. She produced a manila envelope and slid it across the table to me. I've been meaning to give you this for a few weeks, she said, arranging her expression into something that was meant to look like concern. It's related to Grandma's estate. There's a property in the portfolio, that little commercial building, that's been appraised and we've had a preliminary offer. The buyer is motivated. The attorney says you should move quickly. I looked at the envelope without touching it. How much is the offer? I asked. $320, she said. Which is good for what it is. A dry cleaner, Clara. It's not exactly a crown jewel. What was the appraisal? She blinked. There's a summary in the envelope. I'd rather you tell me. A half-second pause. Around $325. It's basically at appraised value. It was appraised at $490,000, I said. After the rezoning last spring. The table went very quiet. My mother looked at my sister. My sister looked at me. My brother looked at the wine in his glass. Where did you get that number? My sister asked. Her voice was still controlled, but something behind her eyes was recalibrating. From the certified appraisal that my attorney commissioned 3 weeks ago, I said. The same attorney who has been conducting a comprehensive review of the estate and all related transactions. You hired an attorney. My mother said it flatly. I did. Why on earth would you need an attorney? The estate is straightforward. Your grandmother's lawyer has been handling everything. My grandmother's lawyer was contacted by someone claiming to represent our family, I said. Someone who told them I was unstable and incapable of managing a large financial decision. Someone who was trying to facilitate a sale of Grandma's house to a development company for $1.4 million, when it's currently worth $2.1. My sister pushed her chair back slightly. An involuntary movement, like someone preparing to stand up. That's a complete mischaracterization of... You emailed the development company directly, I said. The subject line was, Victorian property, motivated seller. My attorney has the full correspondence. I looked at her steadily. You are not a motivated seller. You are not a seller at all. It is not your house. My mother turned to look at my sister fully now. Diane, she said. What is she talking about? My sister's composure was cracking at the edges, the specific fracture pattern of someone who had been building a story for a long time and is watching the foundation give. Mom, she's twisting everything. I was trying to help. I was trying to make sure we didn't end up with a complicated estate situation where you were going to pocket the difference, I said. $700,000. To pay off credit cards. To keep the leased car. To stay ahead of the repossession order that's been filed on that car for the past 6 weeks. The dining room was absolutely silent. My mother made a sound that was not quite a word. You have a repossession order? She said to my sister. My sister's jaw tightened. It's a temporary cash flow issue. I have 3 deals closing in January that will. You have not closed a deal in 14 months, I said. Your license is on compliance hold. You are 9 credit cards deep and 3 months behind on your rent. I set my fork down carefully. I don't say any of this to hurt you. I say it because you were prepared to steal $2.1 million from me and call it a favor. My sister stood up abruptly, her chair scraping back. You don't know what you're talking about. You're a 3rd-grade teacher, Clara. You don't understand real estate. You don't understand finance. You don't understand what it takes to build something. I understand that you answered my text from the side of the highway and told me you were stretched thin, I said. While you were standing on a rooftop bar. She stopped. I was testing you, I said. I needed to know who would show up. My car was not broken down. I was not stranded. I had $300 in an envelope in my pocket when I called you. But you told me you couldn't help, and I needed to hear you say it. My mother had been very still throughout this exchange. Now she turned toward me and I recognized her expression, the one that preceded a particular kind of coldness she deployed when she felt cornered. I hope you are not suggesting, she said, that my call is in the same category as your sister's behavior. I was at my book club. I told you to call a friend. That is not. Mom, I said gently. The commercial property. A beat. You've been in contact with a buyer for 8 months, I said. You presented yourself as the authorized agent for the estate. You accepted a preliminary verbal agreement for $320,000. You were planning to inform me that the net payout after estate fees would be substantially less than the actual value and keep the rest. My mother looked at me the way she had looked at me my entire life when I said something she didn't want to hear. Like I was a radio playing the wrong station and she was deciding whether to change it or turn it off. That is an absolute lie, she said. I was trying to simplify the process for you. You have no experience managing an estate. I was trying to protect you from being overwhelmed. She told me my poverty was my choice, I said to no one in particular. just the air in the room. When I called her from the side of a highway, frightened, needing $600 to get home safely, she told me that living paycheck to paycheck was a choice, and to figure it out. My mother said nothing. I have been figuring things out my whole life, I said. I think it's time the rest of you started. I looked across the table at my brother, who had been completely silent, his wine untouched for the last 10 minutes. I want to give you the opportunity to say something, I said. Before I do. He met my eyes. Something in his expression shifted. Not surprise exactly. More like a man who has been waiting for a specific door to open and is not entirely relieved to see it. The loans, he said quietly. The loans, I agreed. My mother turned to look at him. What loans? He pressed his hands flat on the tablecloth. I made some investments that didn't perform the way I expected. I needed to bridge a gap. What gap? My mother said. What loans? $280,000, I said, secured against this house. His signature and yours, except yours was forged. The first notice of intent to foreclose came 6 weeks ago. He's been intercepting your mail. My mother's face went through several expressions very quickly. The bank has been sending certified letters, I continued. He signed for them. You never saw them. You are currently 2 months from foreclosure on a house you believe you own outright. My mother turned to look at my brother with an expression I had never seen on her face before. She looked very old suddenly. Not in a physical way, but in the way people look old when a story they believed about their life turns out to have been written differently than they thought. You forged my name, she said. Not loudly. Just the words, one after another. My brother exhaled. I was going to fix it. I had a position in a fund that was supposed to. You forged my name, she said again. Mom, on my house. She pressed 2 fingers to her lips. On my house that your father and I spent 30 years paying off. My sister had sat back down at some point during this exchange. She was looking at my brother the way people look at co-conspirators who have just made everything significantly worse. I waited. I let the silence be what it was. There was no satisfaction in this part of it. Just the heavy, necessary weight of the truth settling over a table that had held a lot of secrets for a long time. Then my mother looked at me. Her eyes were bright in the sharp way that precedes very controlled crying. All of this, she said. The attorney, the investigation. All of this because I told you to figure out your car. Her voice climbed slightly. I had a book club, Clara. I couldn't drop everything for every. You told me living paycheck to paycheck was a choice, I said. While you were sitting on a debt you don't know about, in a house with a foreclosure notice being hidden from you, while your daughter was engineering a scheme to steal my inheritance. The choices being made in this family were not mine, Mom. Her expression shifted again. I recognized the next move before she made it. The appeal to maternal authority, the demand that I remember what she had given me, what she had sacrificed, what family meant. You are sitting in my house, she began. About your house, I said. I reached into my jacket and removed a folded set of documents. I set them on the table between us. She looked at the papers without touching them. My sister leaned forward to read the top line. I watched the color leave her face incrementally. What is Meridian Property Group? My mother said. That's the corporate entity that purchased the outstanding loan debt from the bank 6 days ago, I said. When a loan is in default, and the bank is preparing to foreclose, they are often willing to sell the note to a third party. Meridian purchased your son's defaulted loans, the entire balance, and has the legal standing to set the terms of repayment. My mother was very still. Meridian Property Group is me, I said. The table was quiet in a new way. Not the quiet of shock or confrontation, something more like the quiet of a very long story reaching its final paragraph. You bought my debt, my brother said. Your debt secured against Mom's house, I said. Yes. My sister looked at the documents, then at me, then back at the documents. I could see her doing the mathematics of what this meant, each column adding up to the same sum. You have the house, my sister said. Technically, Meridian has the loan that is secured by the house, I said. But yes, the practical effect is that the house belongs to me until the loan is repaid, which it cannot be, because the money is gone. I looked at my mother. I'm sorry. I know that is not what you wanted to hear. My mother sat back in her chair. She looked across the table, past the centerpiece she had chosen, past the candles she had lit, past the dishes she had cooked herself. She looked at my sister, who had been silently bankrupting herself. She looked at my brother, who had been secretly bankrupting her. She looked at me, the daughter she had spent 2 decades underestimating, and I watched her understand, all at once, that the architecture of her family had been built on a foundation that was never what she thought it was. "What are you going to do?" she said finally. "Not a demand, just a question." "I'm not going to foreclose," I said. "You can stay in the house. I have no interest in putting you out." I paused. "But I will be assuming the role of the estate executor going forward, and all decisions related to Grandma's assets will go through my attorney. The commercial property will be sold at fair market value, and the proceeds will go where they belong. The Victorian house will not be sold to developers at a discount, and any future attempts to contact buyers or attorneys on behalf of the estate without my written authorization will result in legal action." My sister made a sound that was not quite a word. "I also need you to know something about Grandma," I said. "I've been going through her records. She sent me birthday cards every year until I was 15. I never received them. She called this house 17 times between when I was 12 and when I was 18. I never knew. I looked at my mother. I lost 18 years with a woman who loved me. I would like you to think about that." My mother pressed her hands together in her lap. She did not look at me. I stood up from the table. I folded my napkin and placed it beside my plate, which is a habit I have because I once read that it is the polite way to end a meal, and I had been trying for a long time to be the kind of person who knew the polite way to do things. "I'm leaving now," I said. "The attorney's contact information is on the second page of those documents if anyone has questions." I got my coat from the hook by the door. My coworker had offered to wait for me in the parking lot at the end of the street in case things went badly and I needed someone to drive. I had told her it wasn't necessary. Standing in the hallway, putting on my coat, I thought about my grandmother writing me a letter she was not certain I would ever read. She had said the 2 pieces of information should not arrive at the same time, the love and the money. She had wanted me to find out who loved me first. I had found out. One person had driven 45 minutes in the dark and brought me a granola bar. That was the whole list. But one was enough. One had always been more than I actually had before. My mother appeared in the hallway doorway. "Clara." Her voice was quieter than it had been at the table. She looked smaller somehow, the way people look smaller when the room they're standing in suddenly belongs to someone else. "I know tonight was hard. But you have to understand that everything I have ever done, every decision I made, was to provide for this family. Your grandmother and I had our differences, but I kept this family together. I sacrificed." "Mom," I said. I buttoned the top button of my coat. "When I called you from the highway, I was scared. I needed $600 and someone to tell me it was going to be okay." I met her eyes. "You told me my poverty was a choice and to figure it out." She opened her mouth. "Figure it out," I said quietly. "It's not my problem." I opened the front door and walked out into the cold December air. My coworker's car was parked at the end of the street, exactly where she said it would be. I could see the glow of the overhead light inside, her profile as she looked up from her phone. She had been sitting there for 2 hours, reading, waiting, in case I needed someone. I had set up the trust 2 days earlier. $2 million. Irrevocable. Structured to generate a reliable annual income and to be entirely outside the reach of any person, court, or settlement proceeding that did not originate from her. I had also purchased outright a small house 6 blocks from the school where we taught. 3 bedrooms, a porch, a yard. The deed was in a folder on my passenger seat. I climbed in and sat down and closed the door. She looked at me with the specific expression she used when she was asking a question without committing to the sound of it. "It's done," I said. "Are you okay?" I thought about it honestly. "I will be," I said. She nodded. I handed her the folder from the passenger seat. She took it and opened it and was quiet for a long moment reading. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. "Clara," she said. "I can't." "You drove 45 minutes in the rain with $300 cash and a granola bar," I said. "For someone who turned out to not even need help, you stayed anyway. You asked if I was okay before you asked any other question." I closed the folder with her hand still holding it. That house is yours. The trust is yours. You will never have to send money home to Michigan and have nothing left over. Not ever again. She looked at the folder. Her hands were shaking slightly. The way hands shake when the body is trying to process something larger than the ordinary size of days. I was just doing what anyone would do, she said softly. No, I said. You were doing what you would do. That is not the same thing. She was quiet for a moment. Then she closed the folder carefully and held it against her chest the way people hold things they do not trust themselves not to drop. Your grandmother sounds like she was a remarkable woman, she said. I think she was, I said. I'm sorry I didn't get to know her sooner. We sat there in the warm car for a minute. Outside, the December cold was sharp and clear. The street looked the same as it always had, quiet and ordinary. The kind of block where people live their lives at the scale that most lives are actually lived. But something was finished in me. Something that had been waiting for a long time to understand what it was had finally understood. Family is not the people who share your last name. Family is not the people who show up at an annual dinner because your mother considers it non-negotiable. Family is not obligation, and it is not proximity, and it is not the debt you carry because someone made a choice to be present at the beginning of your life before you could have any opinion about it. Family is the person who shows up at the end of the street in the cold and waits, in case you need someone. I had spent 29 years looking for that person in the wrong places. I had looked for her at a dining room table set with candles and a centerpiece and dishes that were cooked from scratch to prove a point. I had looked for her in phone calls that went straight to voicemail and texts that arrived 6 minutes late with the wrong answer. She had been eating lunch with me every day for 2 years and asking if I was okay before she asked anything else. Have you ever discovered that the person who had nothing to gain was the only one who actually showed up? Have you ever realized that the people who called themselves your family had been quietly deciding your worth in a currency you never agreed to be measured in? Tell me in the comments. And if you've been the person at the end of the street waiting in case someone needs you, I hope you know that it matters more than you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Mending Stories. We're just getting started.